Our study this morning is in the 33rd chapter of Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 33, beginning with verse 17. Ezekiel 13, verse 17. Up to this period of time, chronologically speaking, Ezekiel was telling the people in captivity, the Jews in captivity, that Jerusalem was going to be destroyed. Now a lot of them didn't believe that because there were false prophets there saying, God's people aren't going to be destroyed. The temple's not going to be destroyed. Jerusalem is going to remain. Going to be kind of an eternal city. But Ezekiel, by various and sundry ways, said it's going to be destroyed. Well, in the next, this morning we're going to be talking about how that a messenger came to Ezekiel and indicated, the city was destroyed. Now, does that mean that all the people would be completely gone? No. See, there were Nebuchadnezzar had several made several assaults on Jerusalem, and we're going to find out today from Ezekiel, in the 33rd chapter, 34th chapter, 33rd in particular. We're going to find out that there were some remaining, even after all those assaults and those Nebuchadnezzar taking various captives at various periods of time. Going to find out that there's still some folks there. And then you'll remember from our previous studies, if you were here, a few months back, you remember that after Jerusalem was destroyed, there were some poor folks. They kind of left the poor folks behind, and new leadership, unappointed leadership, at least not God's appointment. They came in and mobilized the people, and ultimately one of the particular leaders led the children of Israel, the rest of them, led them back or took them to Egypt. Now, isn't that something? They were supposed to stay there in Jerusalem, but they led them back. And then there were probably people, I know there would have been, according to the record, people left there. And we're going to find out that God said he was going to kind of hunt them down. The renegades, the evil people, the evil Jews, going to hunt them down and get rid of them. So what did he have left? Some of them went off to Egypt. Was no doubt when Egypt was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, they may have been destroyed. So what do they have left? What? Well, nothing. Well, so then what happened later? Well, after the 70 years, the migration come back. They migrated back under Ezra, Nehemiah, and Zerubbabel. Now you have to wonder, at least I have to wonder, here's Daniel over here in the throne room. He's over there in the government of Nebuchadnezzar. And Jeremiah is in Jerusalem before it was destroyed. And Ezekiel, being a part of that first wave of captivity, he's over there with the captives in Babylon. You have to wonder, would there have been any interaction among Jeremiah, Daniel, and Ezekiel? They were by the way they traveled. Babylon was 600 miles, so it was a 600-mile trip from Jerusalem. So, and with the kind of communication system they had, you wonder, what kind of interaction there were there. And then the question comes up: were there other prophets? You suppose there were other prophets in addition to, Daniel, Jeremiah, Ezekiel at that period in history? Well, at any given time, God seems to have had several prophets, even the minor prophets. God seemed to have several prophets teaching people. So it's kind of one has to wonder if what kind of interaction there were, and how did they communicate, and did they communicate, and that sort of thing. Well, bring us back to chapter 33. From chapter 33 to the end of the book of Ezekiel, there's an emphasis on the future. Well, Jerusalem gone, the temple's gone, the Jews are in captivity, those that weren't killed. So chapter 33 and beyond has to do with what's the future of this thing. Now, those people that Ezekiel was communicating with in captivity, had they learned their lesson? Had those people then, did they acknowledge that their sins got them in trouble, and it was the cause of the downfall of the elimination of Jerusalem and the temple? Well, they said they're in captivity, and they invoke the idea that, well, God's not fair. I mean, this is too much. Maybe if we were evil, they acknowledge that they were evil, but this is too much. God is not, well, he uses the word here, God is not equal, not fair. That's beginning then in the 17th verse of the 33rd chapter. He says, "Yet the children of thy people say, the way of the Lord is not equal. It's not just. But as for them, their way is not equal." The Jews in captivity there, they weren't equal, they weren't fair to one another, or they had a bad attitude toward God. Now, when people say that God is not fair, that God is not just, those people are in a heap of trouble. Yet the children of thy people say, the way of the Lord is not equal, not just, not fair. But as for them, their way is not just. When the righteous, now here's some interesting stuff here. When the righteous turn from his righteousness and commit iniquity, he shall even die thereby. So, a righteous person that turns south or turns wicked, they're not going to be. They're committed to destruction. But then, if the wicked turn from his wickedness and do that which is lawful and right, he shall live thereby. Now, yet ye say, the way of the Lord is not equal or just. O ye house of Israel, I will judge ye every one, after his ways. Now, how does that work? I mean, what's going on here? Were the Jews saying that this idea that if a righteous person turns bad, be punishment, or if a wicked person turns good, just the opposite? Now, is that concept, is that what is the reason that the Jews said that God is not just? Or has Ezekiel introduced a new thought? The Jews had a notion at that time. They had a notion that it was the evil by their fathers that caused all of this. They were thinking, not me. Not us. It was the evil that was perpetrated by their fathers, their grandfathers, and so forth. So, in this when Ezekiel brings up this idea that a righteous person turning bad is going to be punished, that's going to be his or her destiny in the spirit world. Or if a wicked person turns to God, his destiny is going to be for the good. So what's Ezekiel? What do you think Ezekiel is saying here? The book of Ezekiel saying here with regard to why the Jews said God's not just. Anybody proffer?
I think they wanted their cake and eat it too. They wanted to live the life that they lived with all the other gods and all the things that basically they were not allowed to do, and they suffered the consequences of it.
Yeah, Ned's saying that they wanted their cake and wanted to eat their cake and have it too. Or say that again.
They wanted their cake and eat it too.
They wanted their cake and eat it too. Yeah. Well, that's an expression we hear once in a while. So that they may have expected God to bless them, even though they were rascals, right? So what? Anyone else have a notion about this? Well, it's kind of puzzling that the way it's presented here, but we'll go on, not really knowing the yes.
If you think about what it's saying, it's basically saying the same thing, like a foreshadow of what Jesus says down the road.
Say that again.
If you are secure, if you sin and you come towards the end and you finally realize that it's wrong, and do good, then you're going to end up with, or just because you did good, and you start to turn evil doesn't mean that it's more about how you end up at the end goal.
Yeah, and Kathy's, I think, bringing up the idea that the good for a righteous person to turn evil, the good that he or she had done in the past isn't in the bank, to offset, or and so the the good in that case is not acknowledged. Now then, what about the bad? A bad person turns good. Are the bad things going to be remembered? Not according to this, you see. Well then, in verse 21, it came to pass in the 12th year of our captivity, in the 10th month, in the 5th day of the month, that one had escaped out of Jerusalem, came unto me, saying, the city is smitten. Now, there are two ideas about how long this was. When the question comes up, did Elijah know that the city had been destroyed prior to the time this person came? And we could speculate about that. He may or may not have. But this seemed to be this person that escaped seemed to be bringing the news. Some people, some scholars think that it was a 6-month lag there. It took this person 6 months to get, this 600-mile trip. And of course, whether they walked or by donkey or chariot, whatever, we don't know. But then others believe it was like a year and 6 months before that news finally got to Elijah and this settlement of captives that Elijah was dealing with. Now, the hand of the Lord was upon me in the evening, afore or before. He that was escaped came and had opened my mouth, until he came to me in the morning, and my mouth was opened, and I was no more dumb. Well, in this, see, Ezekiel, from time to time, was silenced by God. We've noticed that before. He didn't mingle with the people. He didn't teach. He no doubt had written some of these prophecies, and it was a written product, but not necessarily an oral iteration. So God said, now, Elijah, you start teaching. Now, Jerusalem is destroyed. Now, look to the future. He's not going to go back and review all these events that led up to the destruction and the actual destruction of Jerusalem. That's in the past. Now we're going to go forward. So, he had opened his mouth. God had opened his mouth. That is, he had. It wasn't as if Ezekiel couldn't speak before that. It was as if it was that God didn't require him to, or allow him to speak and to teach it. That in some of those previous months and years. So, in verse 23, then the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, they that inhabit those wastes of the land of Israel. Now he's referencing back to the few people that were left in Jerusalem. And they were saying, now, I don't believe that Elijah actually heard them. How would he hear them? No telephones, no means of communication that we have today. But God, apparently, according to this, God heard them. Now, here, back in that Judean area, the few people who were left, they had a bad attitude. attitude was, Abraham was one, they were saying, and he inherited the land, but we are many. The land is given to us for an inheritance. So, what were they saying? This is our land, right? God has given us this land, and it's ours. Well, it was a promise to Abraham, but what happened? Having possession of that land was conditional. Now, let's fast forward to 2000, the 21st century. Whose land does that Jerusalem area belong? Does that belong to the Jews? Pardon me? But does it belong to the Jews by God's decree? Now, there are lots of people that are suggesting that, hey, nobody has a right to that geographic area but the Jews. That's their attitude. Lots of people. Periodically, I get mailings. I get a bushel of mail every day, soliciting money, or I don't know where they get my name. But I guess if you give to one thing, everybody gets on the dole, So, there's an organization about a group of Christians and Jews, and they talk about, the Jews are going to, Jesus is going to come back to the earth and set up a kingdom there, reign out of Jerusalem and all that stuff, that predestination stuff, 1,000-year reign stuff, Well, the Jews, that land was not, he's saying here that it was given to Abraham, it was conditional, you messed up, you no longer have exclusive right to it. Verse 25, wherefore say unto them, now you tell them, Ezekiel, you tell them, thus saith the Lord God, ye eat with the blood. What's that have to do with anything? One of the restrictions, dietary restrictions for the Jews was what? You don't eat any animal with the blood, in it, with the blood mingled in the flesh. You see, he's just using an example. He's just using some examples. This is not an exclusive list. You eat with the blood. You lift up your eyes toward your idols, and they must have still been doing that even after the destruction of Jerusalem, those few that were left. And you shed blood. After Nebuchadnezzar got done with the destruction of Jerusalem, and those few people that were left, there was one person, Gedaliah. Gedaliah was kind of in charge. Well, there's some Jewish dude down in Moab. He came up and killed Gedaliah, and they were still they were not righteous. And then some of these remaining Jews were led off into Egypt, as we said earlier. So they were still a bad bunch. You stand upon your sword, ye work abominations. And he's given a few examples here. You defile every man his neighbor's wife. And shall you possess your land? That's a kind of a rhetorical question. Are you going to, you're going to possess? Are you going to claim this land? after you've broken the conditions. In verse 27, say thou thus to them, thus saith the Lord God, as I live, surely they that are in the waste shall fall with the sword, and him that is in open field, out in hitherlands, will I give to the beast to be devoured, and they that be in the forts and in the caves shall die of the pestilence. So God wasn't done with the Jews there in the Judean area. Those that were evil are going to be destroyed. For I will lay the land most desolate, and the pomp of her strength. That is, that whole, the pride, the arrogance, and the pomp of their strength, their strength, their arrogance shall cease. And the mountains of Israel shall be desolate, and none shall pass through. So, after Nebuchadnezzar finished his work, and by the way, in the 52nd chapter of Jeremiah, there's a notation. Jeremiah notes that after various waves of captivity, there were more of the Jews taken into captivity. I think it's 785 is what Jeremiah says. And so you see there these, and I imagine history doesn't record all the skirmishes between Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, and the Jerusalem area. No doubt there were continuing waves of assault on that Jerusalem area by Nebuchadnezzar, subsequent to the destruction of the walls and the destruction of the temple. Yeah. So the bottom line of all this is that God was in His providence and His direction is going to get rid of those problem Jews, so to speak, and the unrighteous there. Then in verse 29, then shall they know that I am the Lord. That lesson, that idea that they shall know that I am the Lord, comes up over and over again. When I have laid the land most desolate because of all of their abominations which they have commanded. The land kind of spewed those people, so to speak, spewed them out of the area. And then in verse 30, alas, he changes some new paragraph here. Also, thou son of man, the children of thy people still are talking about thee by the walls and the doors of the houses, and speak to one another, every one to his brother, saying, Come, I pray thee, and hear what is the word that cometh forth from the Lord. Now what's going on here? Well, the general population, the people, they're talking about whom? Ezekiel. Jerusalem's been destroyed. We're in a world of hurt here in captivity. So maybe that's all they had to do. They were just talking about this prophet Elijah. Or Ezekiel. I keep saying Elijah. I don't know Don't know why that happens, but it just comes out. Son of man, they that inhabit those are saying to them, I just going to the verse 30 again. Also, thou son of man, the children of thy people still are talking against thee by the walls and in the doors of the houses, and speak to one another, every one to his brother, saying, Come, I pray you, and hear what is the word that cometh forth from the Lord. Ezekiel must have been an interesting character for them, and you can just imagine the wise old owls in this captive community were saying, "Well, I wonder what that old guy's up to now. Why don't we find him and see what he has to say?" And in verse 31, and they come unto thee as the people cometh, and they sit before thee as a people, and they hear thy words, but they will not do them. For with their mouth they show much love, but their heart goeth after their covetousness, or their own pride. So I wonder why they even came to hear him. Why would you go to hear somebody that you just weren't going to pay any attention to him? You'd listen, but it wouldn't make any difference. Why would you do that?
Read verse 32. It sounds like they were entertained by him.
Ah, yeah. The next verse kind of answers that question. And lo, thou art unto them as a very lovely song. Maybe they were making up jingles about him, you know. The way people, you know, they'll set to music some bizarre behavior of somebody. And lo, thou art also a lovely song, you know, and then he hath a pleasant voice, can play well on the instrument, for they hear thy words, but they do not them. And when this cometh to pass, verse 33, and lo, it will, then shall they know that a prophet hath been among them. So what's he saying here? How are these people going to know that Elijah was a prophet of God? Well, he may have been prophesying some things. He did prophesy that Jerusalem would be destroyed. It was destroyed. Did that register with those people? Did they really internalize that and change their behavior and say, you know, this prophet is the real thing. He was telling us all along that Jerusalem was going to be destroyed, and it was destroyed. Now, we better go listen to him and see what we ought to do. Well, they went to listen to him, but they weren't interested in they weren't interested in following through. If any of you have ever taught school, and you know, on a regular basis, and some days you just thought that, you know, these kids aren't. They look like they're listening, but you can tell that, boy, their mind's on something else other than, I don't know. Preacher, can you read the audience to know whether somebody's really?
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
See what I mean? after a while, you can read your audience, can't you? And no doubt Elijah's, he read the audience. And of course, some of them probably, when they were being entertained, as Ned pointed to this, when they were being entertained, they were probably had facial expressions that indicated that, yeah, you're right, or if you've ever presented to a group and you see somebody scowling, somebody, furrowing their brow, and no doubt all that was taking place there when Elijah was there. You have to conclude that Elijah's ministry, his preaching experience, wasn't very pleasant. He might have been getting some attaboys from these people, but they were just humoring him, much like people today will probably go out and say, with regard to a sermon, might say, boy, that was really good. But maybe they just picked up the stories, I was a legislator, a guy that was voted into the legislature that I had seen, maybe 20 years ago. He said I hadn't seen him for 20 years, and I didn't recognize him, but he's now in the legislature, and he said, boy, I remember something you said 20 some years ago. I remember exactly what you said. And I said, what was it? He said, you told a joke, and then he told that joke to me, that I had told to an audience. Well, that wasn't what I wanted them to remember. I had something important to say. Didn't know what that was, but he remembered that, it was kind of entertaining. The content didn't make any difference. So that was Ezekiel's lot in life there, I suppose. Now then, in chapter 34, he puts the shepherds of Israel on notice. Yeah, who are the shepherds of Israel? Well, kings were often referred to as shepherds. Priests, in a sense, were shepherds. Prophets were, in a sense, shepherds. Were some of the prophets false? Yeah. Were some of the priests bad? Yeah. Were some of the community leaders bad? The shepherds, those who kind of help. Well, what's the purpose of leadership? And that's an important idea here in order to really fully grasp what is being said. Well, what's the purpose of leadership? In religion, what's the purpose of leadership? To lead. Yeah. To nurture that is help, but not abuse, not take advantage of the folks that are being led, whether it be in the realm of religion or the civic matters. It's a matter of, first of all, do no harm to them, help them, nurture them, and let's see what's happening here, what Ezekiel says about the leadership of Israel over time. The word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say unto them, Thus saith the Lord God unto the shepherds, Woe be to the shepherds of Israel, that do feed themselves, In other words, those that take advantage of and have the good things in life, whereas the sheep, so to speak, don't have those things. Yeah, go to the shepherds. Woe unto the shepherds of Israel that do feed themselves. Shepherds are supposed to feed the flock, so to speak, but they feed themselves. Ye eat the fat. I was thinking about Eli the prophet and his two sons. Remember back in the history of Israel during the time of the judges? So what the sons of Eli? What kind of people were they? They were bad. They were so bad that they took advantage of those that were bringing offerings. They took advantage of silly women coming to the temple. You eat the fat, that is the good things. You clothe yourself with wool. That's pretty expensive. In that day, pretty expensive attire. You kill them that are fed, but you feed not the flock. The diseased have you not strengthened. They didn't establish hospitals. They didn't establish clinics. They didn't provide balm for their wounds. They apparently discarded the diseased. Neither have ye healed that which was sick, neither have ye been bound up that which is broken. No hospitals here, you see. Neither have ye brought again that which was driven away. That is, someone runs somebody off and you haven't done anything. As leaders, you haven't done anything to establish justice. Neither have ye sought that which was lost, but with force and with cruelty have ye ruled them. Not only have you not helped them, you've abused them. That was their attitude. At the time of Christ, the Jewish Sanhedrin, did they have a similar attitude toward the folks? Somebody said, "Oh yeah." They had a.
They were very much higher above everybody
Yeah.
else. They wanted to worship.
What's that?
That's now the bell.
Huh?
That's the bell now.
Oh, that's a new bell. Well, we can hear it now. And it's kind of has a little chime to it. Well, we'll pick up there at verse 5 next time.